Okay, so now all we're going to do is add directed technological change to the previous model and see what happens. I say all we're going to do, it might be tricky, let's see how it turns out. We're not going to throw up the whole DTC model again, we're just going to take the result that we got earlier and say that, look, firms invest in proportion to the factor shares, which in this case with C's and D's is this: ZC over ZD, where Z's are their investment in research, are in proportion to the factor shares. And the factor shares are in proportion to the factor quantities. I'm going to pause. Okay, I'm going to do it differently from on the slides. I don't know why I did it like that on the slides, because we've already got this result, haven't we? I think. Oh. I guess we haven't really, but actually, so in the technological change model, we've set the gammas equal to each other, haven't we? So we kind of dropped the gammas, because we had gamma C over WC and gamma D over WD. Now we've dropped the gammas and we've brought the A's inside instead. So if you go through exactly what we did before in the model without technological change, just drop the gammas and put in AC and AD and assume they're not necessarily the same, you'll get this. Okay. Then, having got this, the next thing is to say, look, the knowledge stocks grow independently. So ACT over ACT minus 1 is equal to ZCT to the phi over zeta C, for instance. And ADT over ADT minus 1 is equal to, let's put the zeta C over here, zeta C is equal to Z dt to the phi over zeta D, which when we're going to put these together, we're going to end up with a zeta D here and an equal sign here and a line there when we divide the one equation by the other. Okay. And then we can take this phi outside. Okie doke. But now we've got this, ZC over ZD is equal to this, and we've got a ZC and ZD here. These are unknowns, but these are knowns. So we should have, this is ZCT, T, we should put in T's everywhere here, ACT over WCT, ADT over WDT, to the epsilon, to the phi, which means to the epsilon phi, times zeta D over zeta C. So this is kind of telling us how the knowledge stocks here compared, the growth in the AC compared to the growth in AD is going to look like. Okay, I'm still not really following the slides too much here, so sorry about that. But let's just assume balanced growth. Okay. basically, without going into too much detail, for balanced growth, the factor shares must stay the same over time. Otherwise, it's not going to be balanced right. If one factor is gradually taking more and more of the share and the other's taking less and less, that's never going to be in balance. That's like tipping, isn't it? Without going into too much detail. So this has to be constant, which means the relative investments has to be constant. Which means, if these are constant relative to each other, this side is constant. Which means that these have to be growing at equal rates. Because if they're not, you're never going to be in balance. Okay, let me think about how to explain that better. Okay, yeah. So the key is here that we've assumed that the relative prices are constant. Okay. So then if this is constant, then AC over AD has to be constant, which means that the percentage change in AC divided by it must be equal to the percentage change in AD period by period, which means this has to be equal to 1. So if AC, if we skip this and just put 1 equals this is saying that there are values of AC and AD such that it'll be balanced. Okay, the shares are just right to keep the growth rates just right and to keep everything in balance. But is this a stable balance point or is it unstable? And of course, it's unstable because epsilon is greater than 0. I'm not going to do this math. It's fairly straightforward. But really, nah, we'll skip it. The key is the intuition. Imagine you're at this balance point, and then, for some reason, it wobbles a bit. So one of these prices changes a bit, or one of these just changes a bit. Let's imagine that AC goes up a bit. What happens, if we look here, if AC goes up a bit, this is positive, so this thing goes up, which means that this goes up and ZC goes up. If ZC goes up compared to ZD, then we're putting more effort into growing this than we are into this compared to before when it was balanced, so this is going to grow faster, which is AC goes up more, the share of C goes up more, you put even more effort into ZC, and you're off downhill. Okay. So even if there is a balanced growth path, it's not stable. You're going to go to one of the corners. Okay. So that's what we would expect to see if this story with independent knowledge stocks and the direct DTC was extremely important, as some of the models suggest it is. We would expect to see corner solutions with only one input being used where there are substitutable inputs. But that's not what we see. Okay, so that is adding DTC. I hope that was somewhat helpful.